Hello and welcome to the Lucidus podcast, where I explore everything because I believe everything is connected to everything else, and also because I believe in the infinite, unbounded potential within each of us. And by exploring all things, we have the possibility, maybe even the probability, of discovering parts of ourselves, of our potential that we didn't know. So today I want to talk about patience before the hard conversations. And this isn't the first time I've done it, but I would say it's the first time I've done it with complete awareness and intention and really understanding what I was doing, and not on an intellectual level, not even on a physiological level, but on a spiritual level. So patience, I would say another word I might use here is humility. Patience, humility before the hard conversation. So for the last couple of weeks, I've needed to have a hard conversation with someone in my life and was having a hard time finding clarity with myself, not even with the other person or the situation, but just even clarity with myself. And so it took a couple of weeks before I finally had clarity about myself. And I think that's a very important step. Clarity about myself. I still didn't, and then with that, as I understood myself better, I've had more clarity about the situation, at least from my side. And at that point, I was able to ask for, to have a conversation about it. And there were a few things. It was one of the few times where I've asked for the conversation and not sort of demanded or insisted it be done in a certain time. I just said, hey, I need to have a conversation. I'm feeling this way. Could we do it over the weekend? Or, I understand you might be busy, is there another time? And so they were busy over the weekend, so he said a different time. And then, it was a few days later when we were to meet. So then I had a few days where then I got to prepare for the fact that I was going to have the hard conversation. Finally had gotten to a place where I could. That was the first step. And then second place, I'm actually going to have it. And the patience of then just for a few days sitting with it longer brought me more and more. Like I said, I think humility is an important word here. Because in that patience, I became more humble to what was going to happen. Meaning, there was no insistence, or honestly really no need. Maybe that's the word. There was certainly no insistence, there was no desperation, and there wasn't even a need for the other person to change or to do anything differently. I definitely had a desire. I wouldn't even say it was a strong desire. I had a hopeful desire. I had a very genuine desire that there would be understanding and maybe it wasn't even like a huge change in behavior, but an adjustment it probably was just an adjustment in their understanding, which if the adjustment in their understanding happened, it would naturally lead to a change in behavior. So it was not about, but I didn't go in with this insistence or demand that they change. Somehow in the patience and the humility of the days of waiting and being willing to wait, I understood myself more clearly, and that what I really wanted was for them to understand and see me. And I was hopeful about that. I knew it might not happen. I understood that change of behavior may or may not happen. So patience and humility on those days, and then we get to the moment of the conversation. And I did something I had kind of decided before as well, that I was not going to rush into it or force it. So, we talked for a while about other things, and I could tell both of us were sort of a little bit tense and a little bit hyper alert, like when, we both know what's coming. And at one point I did ask, like, how are you feeling? And they were like, I'm feeling kind of nervous and anxious. I said, yeah, me too. We had a brief little laugh, and then we just finished talking about what we had been talking about. So it was also kind of like a mutual willingness to be with the discomfort of knowing that a hard conversation was coming, and yet we were still going to engage with each other as people do. That the hard conversation didn't define us or didn't define the day or the moment. It was just going to be part of the, our meeting. So at some point we just naturally this conversation sort of lulled, and it was like, okay, I think it's time. And then we did have the hard conversation. And it went just remarkably well. Not quite how I thought. They shared, I shared my side. I guess maybe I said some things that they hadn't really realized. They shared some things that I had for sure not seen and realized. And, it went back and forth, and there were definitely moments of passionately wanting to share how we felt and what we were experiencing and seeing, each of us on both sides. But there was this huge space for that to happen. And I think that came from we had both been willing to be patient and let things be what they were going to be. And we both, there were times when both of us said, I know I can't control this. And so the most I can do is my part, and then what you do on your side is obviously up to you. In the end, I would say we both have a much better understanding of each other and the situation. More important than that, and this is honestly some of my greatest clarity, we built such a deeper level of trust, a deeper level of our ability to communicate, increased exponentially, meaning the next time we need to have a hard conversation, we know that one of us can come and say, hey, I need to have a hard conversation. It's okay if it takes a few days. Like if the other person's like, okay, I can't get to where you are or don't even have time for a few days. It's like, okay, all right, when can we? Okay, and then when we get there, it's not like two voracious animals pouncing on a tiny morsel of food, like both of us desperate and starving. It's going to be like, no, we're both here for it. We're here for more than just the hard conversation. We can take our time getting there. There's no rush. When we get there, we know we're both, there may be passionate moments, and that is fine. We're here for it, and we'll see what comes out on the other side. I wouldn't say there was complete agreement. That for me wasn't even necessary or what I wanted. Interestingly, both of us, as we deepened our understanding of the other person and the fullness of the situation, our behaviors have altered. Again, there's nothing radical that needed or should or whatever happened, but we have both altered enough that it's interesting, even if our behaviors haven't changed much, we both feel a shift. Like so much that happens, as I talk about here, is energetic. Like we both felt a shift in ourselves and in the other person and in the relationship and in the relating and in the situation that it's not even like we needed the behaviors to change. It was almost like the energy of it needed to change. And that for me is crucial in life, because someone can walk in a room and two different people can come in and say the same words. And we know this. And they're not the same. The energy of them is not the same. They don't hit us the same way. Like, we just know, like, that may be the same words the last person said, but this is not the same person, and they're not bringing the same sort of energy. So oftentimes I think I get hung up on people's behaviors, or even on my own behaviors. And I forget to understand that if I can get to a place, or if and when I get to a place, or if and when they get to a place, that the energy that they have, and the word understanding keeps coming up for me, I'm not sure why, but it's almost like the energy of their understanding, or the depth of their understanding, or the breadth of their understanding, or the wholeness or fullness, like something about their understanding, their ability to, and their capacity to, that understanding brings a different energy. And so even though the behavior may be very similar, it isn't the same. And it makes all the difference. So as I was reflecting today, so this happened about a week ago, as I was reflecting today about the conversation, but also really it was all what led up to the conversation. And all that leading up to the conversation was, I think, a very integral part of the success of the conversation. And really the thing that stood out for me was patience. I was patient with myself for many, many days as I struggled. And I wanted to have the conversation, I would say, at least a week before I asked. But I didn't ask, and I didn't ask because I thought, I don't even have clarity about myself. I would have a conversation and say that there were I had issues and there were problems, but I couldn't even formulate clearly what was going on with me. And so I just kept waiting and weathered through a lot of my own storms and confusion and doubts and this and that and this and that, until I finally had clarity about myself. And then, so that patience just with myself. And then also when I asked for the hard conversation, to then offer that same patience to the other person, regardless of whether they just were busy or they just weren't ready and they needed time. So again, the patience with myself to wait until I was prepared, had the clarity I needed, then the patience with the other person so they could have the time they needed, so that when we did come together, it was mutually beneficial. We both had gotten into a place where we could offer clarity about ourselves. So that patience. And again, I bring up humility again, because there were so many times where I literally did, as I went through the days and was struggling with myself in the situation, I didn't physically do it, but many times I energetically or even mentally, I would just see myself, I would just kneel down and put my head on the ground and just be like, just like this thing just had, like you win sort of thing, like uncle, like just on my knees, head on the ground, just like, okay, like I can't do this by myself. I don't know the way. Help me, just head on the ground, just forehead on the ground, just help me, just bowing down before this experience, this situation, this lesson, whatever you want to call it. So, just the patience and the humility that we have with ourselves. What a gift, what grace. And then to be able to extend patience and humility to another person. What a gift, what grace. And the power of those two in before and during and after hard conversations. It's like magic. Really, it feels like magic. It feels like what happened was magic. And there's no secret sauce here. We've heard it so many times before, and I'll probably be telling myself this till the last breath I take, but the ability to be with myself, the ability to be with myself as I am, is everything. If I can't be with myself as I am, it all falls apart. It all falls apart. And so, and for me, in this experience of me in this body, I need to be patient with myself. I need to be humble with myself. I'm not who I wish I was. So many times I fall so short of not who I want to be, but who I believe I can be. I mean, there are times where I'm just like, I know I can be. I know I am like better than this, or better. I try not to use the word better, but there's more here. There's more that I can be in this moment, but I am restricted by certain habits or traumas or genes or, whatever, which I don't believe any of those are. I don't think they're excuses. I think they're just hurdles that are here for us to figure out how to get over, basically. So my big lesson, my big takeaway is the next time I need to have a hard conversation, I need to be with myself first and be with myself until I have clarity about myself in the situation. Be patient and humble with all that's going on inside of me, because I tell you what, man, there's shit shows and shit storms galore. And some of those are not like big, frantic, chaotic things. Sometimes it's just like that I don't know. It's like just this great unknowing of like, what is going on with me? Why can't I be clear? Why can't I find clarity? What is this cloudy, murky, messy darkness that I'm trying to see through or sludge through or wade through, whatever. So patience and humility with myself. And then, and I'm getting better at that, I think. This next one I would say is even newer for me, and that is then, when I ask for the conversation, patience and humility with the other person as they prepare and get to a place where they can, speak with me. As hard as it is to extend that to myself, I would say it's more anxious, or it's a little more scary. Not a little bit, it could be a lot more scary to then be patient and humble with the other person, because it's so vulnerable waiting for someone to have a hard conversation with you when you've asked. It's also scary when you're asked, but and then remaining, patient and humble through the process. And it saddens me that religion has usurped these two words, because they're far older and their meanings are ancient and timeless. So I hope that if patience and humility, if they trigger you in some way, you have some old religious, hang-ups on them, like find a synonym for them, words that work for you, and practice those. Or maybe take them back from, some old religion that doesn't work for you. And maybe you're in a religion that does work for you, and patience and humility work well with you. I'm just saying, don't let the words be any kind of barrier, because they don't need to be. The words are not the magic. The energy is the magic. And so find words that have that energy, that allow you to come to a hard conversation without the need, the insistence, or the demand that the other person do anything. We hope We hope. I certainly do. I certainly hope, but there's a difference. There was a difference in my hoping to be heard and understood than in the past when I've been just tight-fisted. It's like, this has to change. And honest to God, nothing has to change, because too many times I've been sure something had to change, and it didn't, and it didn't, and it didn't, until finally the day it did all by itself. I didn't even do anything. So it would be, my gift today is in sharing the grace of patience and humility before the hard conversation. And if I think back on it, 80% of that patience and humility was for me. The time it took me was 80%. So it wasn't even with the other person. Most of it was with me and for me as I went through my own stuff. And I don't know if it was easier to extend it to the other person because I'd given myself so much, or if maybe just the other person was in such sort of an equal space as me that it was easy for it to transfer to them. I don't know. But hard conversations are, so then the other thing that happened was I had another one today. It was somewhat sort of planned, but not really. I mean, I thought it might happen, but I didn't know, and it did happen. And again, I was able to just start patiently and say, actually, there are some things, and they weren't surprised. They had kind of, made a little mistake, so to speak, and they were just so open and appreciative that I would, share my experience and that we could talk about it, with just very openly and honestly. I don't know that I know that I won't always get it right. I don't know that I'll always be able to be patient or even humble, but I'm beginning to understand that with certain people in certain situations, when they too are willing to meet me there, it is like magic. And it builds something. Both times in both these recent conversations, it has built something more powerful than words can describe. The experience of us going through the hard conversation together in the way that we did. It wasn't about us having a hard conversation. I've had hard conversations with people that were damaging. So this isn't about run out and have a hard conversation. No. The fact that we went through the hard conversation in the way that we did together, that built something within each of us and between us that I do not have words for. Beauty, magic, mystery, strength, power. Those don't even touch it, but close as it gets. So running out, having hard conversations, I would not suggest. There are certain people I will never have a hard conversation with. And sometimes it's because of them. I know, I'm just saying it's them. I'm like, no, I really don't believe you have the capacity. And other times it's about me. I realize at least at this time, I am not capable of having a hard conversation with that person. So I wouldn't suggest you run out and have a hard conversation to try to build something. It's not that easy. There's a bit of magic to it. And I think you'll know because you'll be drawn toward it. And you'll be asked to prepare for it, to prepare yourself, You can't prepare the other person. You can't prepare for the other person. You prepare yourself. And in that preparation, and then in the experience of the conversation, something is transformed. And I would honestly say it has, I wish we could look at it scientifically. I would say my nervous system is completely different. That each of those have completely shifted my nervous system. If we could look at the energy of my nervous system before the first hard conversation and after, completely different. Different vibration, different energy, different, color, like whatever the things we might be able to measure. Same thing with the second conversation before and after, different nervous system. And why do I even care about my nervous system? Well, the nervous system for me is basically electrical energy. It's energy. And energy it's not the beginning of this universe, but it is the foundation of the physical universe. So energy is fairly important. I believe there's a lot going on before we ever become energy. I don't have any words for it, but hopefully I get some because it's a big part of my book. Okay, that is what I have for you today. And I hope you find a little bit of this magic in your life. Even if the magic is you having hard conversations with yourself. And even then, I would say don't just run off and have a hard conversation with yourself. Take the time. There are different parts of ourselves that need to talk to each other, and sometimes they need a lot of time before they can do that. So although you may be one physical entity, you might have already realized you have various mental, emotional, energetic entities in you that don't always like to chat. I heard it explained really, really brilliant one day, and they were saying, you might meet somebody and you really like that person, but you have to remember that they have, literally in their DNA and possibly in their energy, they have all these ancestors behind them. And then you're standing there and you have all these ancestors behind you. And if you go back a few generations, some of your ancestors hated their ancestors. And so, when you try to come together, you two may have been able to get along just fine, but your ancestors are fighting like hell back there, causing a lot of problems. So I know I just made an analogy with another person, but within us, I believe if I just look at all of my ancestors, I'm sure I have ancestors back there bickering away that cannot get along because, whatever. So having hard conversations with yourself requires the same thing. Well, this beautiful raven just flew by. Gorgeous blackness. So gorgeous. Some of you may know this, but my son and I both have matching raven tattoos. That was his choice. I wanted to get a tattoo with each of my kids, and he chose a beautiful raven. So, all right, you guys all take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.